How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the shop. Back by popular demand, we're doing more lure making videos. Since the last swim bait video that Sam and I did, we added a couple more molds to the wall. So Jay's Jigs is growing. And last time we did soft plastics, this time we're doing some lead melting. We're making a jig. And this is, I think, the #1 smallmouth jig. If you were to get one mold, and if you're a smallmouth bass fisherman, I think this is the one to get. It is called the Midwest Finesse. I have a couple different variations I'm gonna show you guys, but something different about today's video is we're not just making the jigs. Once we're done making them, we're gonna head out on the water because we got open water now in Northwest Ontario, and we're gonna try to catch some smallmouth on the lures we're gonna make right now. So here we go. All right, guys, this is the Midwest Finesse, but they make a couple different variations. This one, if you are to get just one, this mold gives you sizes from 1/4 all the way down to 1/16 ounce, which is super nice. If you're just making one mold, this is great. The only problem is if you're mainly using 3/32 ounce or 1/16 ounce, you're only making one at a time. So I think just in the last couple months, they actually came out with a couple new versions. They came out with the production versions, and essentially on specific sizes, it gives you 6 of the same size. So if you're cranking out a lot of jigs, this is probably what you wanna do. So I have a 3/32 ounce, I have a 1/16 ounce, and I have an 1/8 ounce, and then I can do 6 at a time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna load these up with hooks, load these up with the wire keepers, and we're gonna make enough jigs in one shot to set us up for this trip. One of the best parts of making your own tackle is maybe not the cost savings, which is good, but also it's the customization that you can do. You can create colors that haven't been created before. You can, get the perfect hook that you need for your situation. So that's cool, where you can play with different hooks and, different components and that sort of stuff. So the hooks we're using this time, this is what's recommended. This is the Owner style 5.313. These are 1/0. I have some 2/0s as well. And then you also need the wire keeper. You'll see a close-up of these yet when we're putting them in, but basically, I don't know, it makes it like a premium jig. It's a nice keeper to keep your plastic on. But anyways, we're gonna get the lead warming up. Another thing that's good is to get your molds warm. One thing you can do if you're just doing one mold is you could set it on top of there. You could also put a torch to it. I'm still learning, so I mean, as you're pouring, it'll get warmer, but if you can warm them up beforehand, that's good. And then as far as lead goes, you can buy lead. That's a great option. You'll probably get your best quality lead. If you are cheap like me, you can ask around. I know for roofing back in the day, they used to use lead for, like, I think wrapping around chimneys and different things. I've heard you can use wheel weights. I've also heard that that's kind of dirty lead, so do some research on that. But I have a couple pounds here. I'm probably just gonna put a 1-pound ingot in there. We're gonna get things warmed up, turn on our heater, and get melting. All right, guys, we got the ventilation, we got the garage door open, we got the mask. Make sure this is good for not just particles, but vapors too. I learned that last time. Safety goggles. You just wanna be so careful because with hot lead, it can be pretty dangerous. So safety first. I'm gonna put in the hook keepers and the hooks into all these slots that we have here. Ideally, the molds would be warm, and they will get warm as I do multiple passes, but since I'm doing 4 different molds at once, I'm just gonna bypass that step right now. But I'll show you guys a close-up now as I put all the hooks in. We're doing it. All right, so we got all the hooks in there now, as you can see. And now we're gonna do the wire keeper, and this is a little more tedious because they're just tiny pieces of metal. Once we do that, we're gonna start closing them. And one of the most important parts when you're trying to close this is you want it to sound like that clean metal contact when you close it. If it makes a weird noise when it closes and doesn't close flush, that means one of the hooks jiggled out of place, or the wire keeper. And usually it's pretty obvious when you open it back up, you can see what's wrong. But if you try to pour it like that, then you're gonna have a little crevice in your mold, and then none of the jigs will turn out well. So you wanna make sure they close flush. We're gonna finish putting the hook keepers in, and then hopefully the lead's warm enough by then. All right, guys, the lead is warm. We got all those wire keepers in there, which is very tedious, my least favorite part, but we got all ready to go. We're gonna close the molds up, and we're gonna start pouring some lead. See that? That's not closing properly. See how there's a little gap in there? So I'm gonna open it up, and I'm gonna see where I messed up. Okay, now it's good. Gloves are going on. So right there, I'm gonna lift that lever, and that's how the lead pours out. All right, mold number 1, pinch it tight, hold it right up to the nozzle. All right, as you'll see, it hardens right away. Let's see how this looks. And there you have our first batch of jigs. That was a perfect batch right there. All right, on to the next. There we go. Last round of jigs. That's the multi-size one. Perfect. All right, guys, I'm gonna unplug the heater because that's all we're doing for now, and then I'll give you guys a little close-up of what we just did. We are done melting. That was, I was pretty happy with that. That was for, how many is it per mold? 6, 24 for 24. Sometimes when you have a cold mold, things don't turn out properly, or you need to do a redo, or a couple of them, the lead catches an edge and cools down quicker than it should. Anyways, 24 for 24, I'm pretty pumped. Now, once you're done with this jig, when you pull these jigs out of the mold, there's that little piece of lead on the tip of it, and that's called the sprue. And often what I would do is just grab pliers and bend that back and forth. What actually happens with some of the lighter jigs is it'll actually kind of wiggle everything loose and the jig won't be nice and tight anymore. So on the mold, it actually says recommended clip sprue for best results. I'll take a little pair of clippers here, and I'll hold it up to the GoPro here, and I'll just clip that edge off. It's not maybe as smooth as breaking it, and you could file the tip of it if you want there, if you're gonna paint it, but really that's fine. So pair of snippers instead of breaking it. I'm gonna quickly snip the rest of these, and we're gonna paint a couple. We're not gonna paint all of them because I don't think we need 24 jigs for our afternoon excursion. But yeah, we'll paint up a couple, and I'll show you guys a couple options on how to use this jig. All right, guys, next we're gonna paint a couple jigs. It's pretty basic. You need a little powder paint. This is called Protect Black. If you're gonna get one, just get some black paint for a lot of your bass jigs. A candle, a lighter, and some pliers. You need somewhere to hang your jigs afterwards. I actually have an oven over here. So I'm gonna hang them in the oven. That's typically the last place it'll go, because then I'll bake it in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 minutes, and that hardens the paint on. But for now, we're gonna get the candle lit, and we're gonna paint, I don't know, 4 or 5 jigs. All right, guys, first step, stir up your powder paint. Grab a jig, and you wanna warm it up. So I'm gonna grab it with these forceps, and you're just gonna spin it around and just try to get all sides nice and hot. I don't know exactly what the best length is, but it's always better to, I think, favor a little bit warmer. Get all sides of that jig hot, and then you're gonna stir it in the paint really quick and then tap it off. All right, there we go, first jig done. Not perfect, but that'll be fine. I'm gonna hang it there. All right, let's get another jig. I'm not amazing at this. It's, this is all still new to me, so I'm still trying to figure out the art of all this. But spin it around, get that jig nice and warm. Then you're gonna give it a quick dip in the paint and then knock off that excess, and it should turn into like a liquid type form right away, and that's a pretty good looking jig. So we're gonna hang that up. And the sooner you can pop that paint out, if the paint happens to cover the eyelet, the sooner you can do that, the better it is, because that gets rock solid. And then after you paint every couple jigs, then you should stir it up. And if it ever doesn't turn liquidy, then I would hit it with a little more heat. So now it didn't turn to full liquid, so I'm gonna hit it with a little more heat, and it should get it glossy looking. Knock off the excess. That is a good looking jig right there, guys. There's so many different things you can do with these jigs, and like I said, I think if you were to get one mold as a smallie fisherman, this would be it. You can use it for grubs, for Ned rigs, for flukes, for hair jigs. I mean, really, whatever. This definitely shines as a Ned rig hook, and it's definitely a really good hair jig hook as well. So those are the 2 things I'm gonna do today. First, we're gonna bake these for 20 minutes at, I think it's 350 degrees. That'll get this paint rock hard. Make sure you clear out those eyelets first. And then I'm gonna tie up a hair jig or two and we're gonna hit the water. See you guys in a bit. All right guys, jigs are out of the oven. They baked for about 20 minutes now. The paint is rock hard. There's a bunch of things, like I said, you can do with these jigs, but here are the two rigging options that we're gonna use this afternoon. We got the black marabou jig. I'll do a video on how to tie this up in the future, but it is just a killer for smallmouth, for a little bit shallower fish, swimming through the water column. And then you got the Ned rig, the 3-inch worm type plastic that crawls along the bottom and hops along like that. With these two baits, you can catch smallmouth anywhere in the north in the springtime. And yeah, we're gonna pack up, we're gonna head to the lake, and hopefully we can catch our first smallies on our homemade Midwest finesse jigs. We are getting set up. Another day in paradise. Sunset Country Smallies, that's what we're doing. Pretty cool road going back here, as you guys saw by the footage. I love this, I live for this stuff. Like, don't know anything about this lake other than my buddy Joey D'Souza tipped me off and he said, Jay, if you want a good lake for the kayak, go check out Lake. Well, Joey, if I light up the smallies today, you're the man. If not, I'm not taking your advice anymore. But we have the lake to ourselves, which is not a surprise. Just need to rig up a couple more things. I'm gonna rig up the side imaging today. Sometimes I don't bring the side imaging transducer, but on a new lake like this, especially where the smallies might be deep still, that side imaging is pretty key. So a couple more trips back to the truck and we'll be on the water. This is good. This is good. Are we good? Are you guys good? Oh, forgot my rods. Unreal. Forgot my rods. That would have been a very short fishing trip. We got rods. We got rods. Things are good. Things are great. We are now out on the lake. Got my rods. Forgot my sunglasses. That's okay though. We're gonna just cruise some shoreline. I got the side imaging deucer on today, and I just find side imaging super. I mean, there are types of fishing where it's more important than others, and for deep smallies, it's just so good to see where that rock to mud transition is, that deep rubble, because that's so often where they'll be. Right now, this is a smaller lake, so they could be shallow already, but I'm just gonna do a little cruise, watch the water temps. Right here, we got 48-degree water temps where the wind's blowing. It's that warm surface temp. And that's probably warm enough for them to be shallow. So I might end up casting the hair jig around some of these points. We'll see. I think I just saw a couple fish on side imaging here to the left. Yeah, let's say that's another fish. I'm gonna pause that and show you guys what a fish looks like. Right there. Okay, see? That on the right is the fish, that on the left is the shadow of the fish. So since it's shooting to the left, that's how their return looks. So I know there's fish off to the left here. Nice windswept point. Like I said, water is 47, which is like, that's jerkbait and hair jig range. So I think we might even skip the deep bite and try to catch some of those fish. I'm not sure what that fish was on side imaging, but there is something shallow. It looks like there's another fish right now, so I'm gonna cast out and we'll see if we get our first hair jig smallie. I see some deeper rocks here. Nice rock spine coming off the tip. That is a very textbook spot. So I'm gonna work this pretty slow. And the thing about it, hair jig, come on. Instant, Joey, thank you. Shallow, guys, 4 feet of water. Oh my goodness. Holy smokes, there's 3 smallies following that one up. So good, so good. All right, guys, first cast on the Midwest Finesse hand-tied jig that we just melted and tied up. So cool, nice smallie. Guys, this might be a smash fest. All right, second cast. I'm gonna try to pull off the spot a little bit. So good. Oh, he's behind it. Got him. Oh man, number 2. It's bigger. This is ridiculous, guys. This is ridiculous. Slinging smallies in April. And you know what? It feels so much better when you do it on something you make yourself. Unreal. All right, can we do 3 and 3 casts? 2 smallies in 2 casts. Are we rolling? We're rolling. Come on. Come on. The thing about hair jigs too is that you just so rarely lose fish because they don't have a lot of weight to throw. Number 3, the line you use is very important because it swims through the water. As soon as you have heavy line, you can't cast as far. It doesn't have that same swim. You want to go light. I would say between 5 and 10 pound braid, depending on the stuff you're fishing around. And then for a leader, 6 or 8 pound, really, you shouldn't be going heavier than that, and it just floats through the water. Fishing a hair jig, even though it is kind of boring and basic, it does take a little bit of work, and you want to, most times, reel it as slow as you can without getting snagged. And it's kind of just trial and error. Different size jigs, another fish followed me in, and you get used to how deep that lure swings, and then when you're dealing with heavy wind, that also floats your jig a little bit higher. So you're kind of just reeling and sweeping with the rod, slowly reeling, and it's just a tap. I find a lot of applications, like a lot of fishing techniques, you can get away with a bunch of different rods. With hair jigs, you just need a long rod. If you're gonna try doing it with a 5.5 foot or 6 foot rod, you're gonna struggle. You want a long rod. I would not go shorter than 7.5. This is a 7.5 medium light NRX. You don't need this kind of a rod. You just need something long with a very quick tip and just something pretty soft overall. You don't need a ton of backbone for this. You want something you can whip the jig super far. So you want light line, a long rod, a spool that holds a lot of line. Another thing is with your spools, fill them right to the edge. That makes a big difference when you're casting. I sometimes see people with, they'll just put their braid on or they'll have like half their spool full. It's so much tougher and so much more work for you to make a long cast. So put some monofilament underneath your braid and get it filled right to the edge. And then when you make that cast, the line will just spool off that much easier. Oh, there we go. Big bass, big bass. Oh, oh boy, oh boy. There we go. This is great. Sun's shining, the bass are shallow. Fish just drilled it. Yes, oh. Oh, what? This can't be a bass. This has to be a pike. Has to be a pike. It's a nice pike. All right, guys, pike. There you go. Does that look nice? Sun glistening on it. Sweet. Well, hey, nice bonus. I'm trying option number 2. Once again, the Midwest Finesse. This is not a plastic I poured. I will be pouring some plastics yet for this. I got a mold on the way, but for now we got some store-bought Z-Mans, which are great. And this is a little bit different. This is more just crawling it along the bottom, making it look like a crayfish, just squirting along. Oh, there we go, under the boat, under the boat. Another nice fish. Ooh, that might be the biggest one yet. Even if you guys are fishing in a canoe or a kayak, it absolutely pays to bring proper electronics along. That is a big, long SMB. Sweet. So as I mentioned, these fish aren't in the back of the bays yet, but they're setting up. So they've come out of the deeps already, which is really quick considering the ice only went out probably a couple days on this lake. So they've come out of the deeps. and they're on those first points or shorelines nearby. And sometimes the wind can dictate that a little bit too. You know, where they may be stacked in a certain day, because you get this bright sun. I think today it's 18 Celsius, and it heats up that surface water and blows into a point or blows into a stretch of shoreline, and that can stack up fish, can stack up walleye, stack up pike. I mean, fish just love warm water in the spring. So knowing the water temp is pretty important. And then also proximity to spawning water. In a small lake like this, probably doesn't matter as much, that we're not necessarily, doesn't necessarily need to be near spawning water, but just, yeah, those big rocky, rubbly points, that's just what smallmouth love. And once you've done it on a couple lakes, it's pretty easy to replicate. Got a fish? There's a lot more fish here than I realized. There we go. A lot of smallmouth in this lake. Yes, another fistful of smallmouth. There we go. Oh, there we go. There we go. Big smallie. Probably a 18-inch fish. There's one. Fat bass. Pretty nice. Here we go, guys. There we go. Third cast in a row. That's a long one. That is a big smallie right there. Just chowing. Wow. And there's another bass following this one. 17 and a half. That's what we're catching. Oh, come on. Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that? That was the other fish. Come on. So good. So as far as gear goes, for the Ned, compared to the hair jig, I like a little bit of a stiffer rod. This is a 7-foot medium, 10-pound braid, 10-pound fluoro. The thing about this is you're fishing it right in the rocks. The hair jig, you're often swimming it above the rocks, so you can get away with lighter line. But this, you're setting the hook, and I can feel this is all frayed right now. You're setting the hook, and you're going right into battle. With the hair jig, if you can pull them away, you're fine. So a little bit heavier when you're using the jig and plastic. When you're using marabou, you can get away with lighter. Oh, there's a bass. I can see him following the boat. Look at that. I'm gonna stop that right there. Look at that. That to the right of the boat is the smallie following, and there's the shadow. That might be another fish on the left, but that's what it looks like right there on side imaging. That's to the right of the boat, that's to the left, and the harder the return, the whiter it is. So right there, there's the fish. There's the shadow. All right, we're gonna catch him. There we go. I think that's the one we saw. Jay's Jigs strikes again. And another trick you can pull if you're fishing by yourself is just whipping a cast parallel along the shore, because you're hitting all that sweet water. When you're with multiple people, if you do that, you'll probably get kicked out of the boat. But when you're by yourself and you're trying to fish faster, just throw one parallel to the shoreline, because you're covering all that fishy water. I did just mark another fish out there, right there. Often when you mark those fish on side imaging too, that are on the mud, they're hunting a little bit more. Sometimes the fish are glued to rocks, but if they're on the mud flats, they're, I think, a little more willing to chase baits and to move. So even if you don't know exactly where that fish was that you marked off to the side, just flip a cast out, because if they're in hungry eating mode, they're probably gonna eat it. That was pretty cool. I'd marked that fish a while ago. This one's a little bit above average. A little above average. I'd say we're averaging 17 inches, a couple 18 plus. Another one on the Midwest Finesse. Guys, if you're looking for one mold to get, if you want to start pouring and you do bass fishing, this is good for walleye too. It's pretty sweet to be able to play with different hooks and do all this stuff. I think I'm gonna call it a day. This test was successful. Guys, we made it back. I'm enjoying these lure making videos. I hope you guys are too. I'm loving this fishing kayak. I don't know what else to say. It's perfect for this sort of stuff. Obviously, being in the big boat is a lot easier, a lot more convenient, but for these small lakes, this is exactly what I need. I've been getting a lot of questions about the battery, guys. That is the 170 amp hour. It's the biggest one they make, which might be a little overkill for some people. They make 100 amp hour, which I'd probably recommend to most people. I'm just talking, guys. Please wear a life jacket if you go fishing. Hope you are staying safe and healthy, and we will see you guys probably in a couple days. Thanks for watching.